Thank you so much for joining me today. As you can see, it is a lovely and beautiful day out on the range. Alright, today what we're going to be going over are the 4 safety rules of gun handling, as well as my suggestions for loading and unloading a firearm to give you the best success. I'm also going to do a very brief demonstration on how a firearm actually works to keep people out of trouble. Alright, let's get started. Alright, first thing, finger off the trigger. Weapon dependent, like a AR or 1911. Weapon on safe unless you have an acceptable sight picture and are actively engaging a target, which means right now, right this very second. Rule number 2, don't point your weapon at anything you do not wish to destroy. So be very aware of where the weapon is being pointed at. Rule number 3 and 4 is a word I want you guys to burn inside your head, and that word is no. K-N-O-W. Well, number 3, identify your target. Not only what's in front of it, but what's beyond it, coming in from the flanks. So how do you identify your target? Number 1, you can challenge your target. Who's there? What if it's dark outside? Or what if it's dark? You can use a flashlight or turn on the lights inside your house. So you need to be absolutely sure you know what you're shooting at. You can't be shooting at noises, objects, or movement. That's how bad things happen. 4th and final rule is from Pat McNamara. I really like this rule. And this rule is know what condition your weapon is in. Know if it's loaded. Know if it's not. Because if you need it to be loaded and it's not, you're screwing up. You're not doing your job. Same thing. If you need your weapon to be unloaded and it's not, particularly if you need to disassemble certain firearms, you pull the trigger to disassemble it and it's not unloaded, that's bad news. Alright, moving on to loading and unloading. What I'm going to be demonstrating today is the 2 most common types of firearms, striker fire and double action firearms. First up is striker fire. First step, lock the slide to the rear. Check the chamber. Make sure you have an empty chamber. Check the magazine well. Make sure you have a clear magazine well. Next step is check the magazine capacity. Make sure the magazine capacity is where you need it to be. 1 firm seat. You're not slamming it in there. You're not partially inserting, taking your hand off and slapping it. 1 firm seat. You're trying to replicate what you would do for a magazine exchange if you're out of ammo, if you're just trying to top off your gun. Next step is releasing the slide, mechanically with the slide lock or manually by pulling back and releasing it. One option is a press check. I like to do a press check because I like to be absolutely sure of be absolutely sure of the condition of my weapon. People get in trouble with press checks because they pull back too far and they either eject or partially eject around. All press check is pulling back to just far enough to just see. I usually go in front of the magazine well, wrap my hand around, and use my thumb to just slide back. So pull back just to see it, or pull back just a little bit more to digitally feel. Release the slide, tap the back of the slide to ensure the weapon went back in the battery, and then holster up. Next up is double action firearms. If your double action firearm has a slide mounted safety, I would recommend keeping the safety off. That way when you release the slide, the hammer stays to the rear. So if you're doing a press check, you're not fighting 2 different hammer springs. So first step, lock the slide to the rear. Chamber check, magazine well check. Make sure there are no obstructions. Next thing, check the capacity. 1 firm seat, release the slide either mechanically or manually by pulling back and releasing it. With the hammer cocked back to the rear, pull back ever so slightly to either see or low light to digitally feel. Release the slide, tap the back of the slide, and then mechanically decock. I say mechanically decock versus squeezing the trigger and lowering the hammer. You see this a lot in movies and television. When you squeeze that trigger, you are potentially enabling a firing sequence. And that can be bad, especially if you lose control of the hammer or you lower the hammer down too quickly. You will cause a discharge. So when your hammer is cocked to the rear, make sure you use that decocker. Firing pin block stays in place and everything is safe. Now, let's go over unloading. I've seen this plenty of times. Let me put some plugs in, do a demonstration. Plenty of times where someone will rack the slide, see the shell eject, then remove the magazine, and then fire the weapon. It's immediately followed with, "What happened? I unloaded the gun." Alright, so I want to explain how a firearm actually works. With a loaded magazine, insert the weapon, and either the slide is locked to the rear or the slide is pulled to the rear and then released. The bottom of the breech face strips around from the magazine, pushes the round up the feed ramp and into the chamber. As the round goes into the chamber and levels off, the back of the cartridge, the rim, slides underneath the extractor and then goes into the chamber, fully into battery. Whether you pull back manually or fire the gun, noticing the cycle keeps happening. When you pull the trigger, it just does it automatically. Manually, it's just doing it manually, pulling back the slide. So we need to break the cycle. First step, remove the source of the ammo. Number 1, remove the magazine. Number 2, rack the slide and eject the cartridge. 3, lock the slide to the chamber, or lock the slide to the rear. Check the chamber, check the magazine well. Make sure there's nothing in there. 4, lower the slide and then store the weapon. There are 2 things that you notice that you should notice that I don't do. Number 1, when I eject the round, I do not cover the ejection port to catch the round. And 2, I do not dry fire the gun. The reason why I do not catch the round when I rack the slide is I've been on range where someone did that, and what happened is they actually changed the angle of the cartridge, and when they pulled back the slide, the ejector acted like a firing pin and detonated around in the guy's hand. He ended up being okay, but he still got injured. Second reason why I do not pull the trigger as part of the unloading sequence is that to me it's playing Russian roulette. You shouldn't be pulling the trigger to see if the gun is unloaded. There are only 3 times where I pull the trigger: live fire, simulated, dry fire, and the third one is disassembly. Alright, so double action firearm, very similar. Remove the source of the ammo, rack the slide, lock the slide to the rear, check the chamber, check the magazine well. Slide is lowered and then mechanically decock. Well, folks, that about wraps it up today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you will like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Please make a comment what you liked, what you didn't like about it. I will always appreciate your comments and constructive criticism. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.